Hi, this is Paul Glumaz. 45 years, going on 46 years, veteran organizer with the political movement of Lyndon LaRouche. I joined the movement in 1974, and it'll soon be 46 years. And today is the 18th of December. Christmas is approaching, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. And the big issue in Wall Street and the city of London is how do we make it through Christmas? You know, we're living on massive infusions of funding by the central banks. I think the Federal Reserve is got a Christmas present for the bankers in the range of $500 billion new credit dollars lending, and so some of that money is finding its way into the stock market, and that's they call it melt up. They can't say the stock market is rising. They're saying it's melting up. Somebody made that up, but it's a very strange term. The stock market is melting up. I don't know if that means that that the melt up is preliminary to the meltdown, but it's a very odd way of talking about a stock market boom. Usually they say, "Oh, the stocks are going up. Hey, the economy is great." Well, you know, that's not really what's going on right now. It's a desperation. Of course, many of you cannot help but find your day annoyed by the noises in the Congress, the barnyard noises in the Congress of impeachment. And these reports they're writing on impeachment can go up to 600 pages. And the less they have to impeach the president on, the more the pages of these reports are. Because they don't want you to read the report. Because so they make the reports 400 pages, 500 pages, 600 pages, 200 pages. You know, I mean, who's going to take the time to read all of that? And by the time you read it, what is it all going to mean anyhow? And so I'm not going to go through it with you. You know, but the gag reflex around the country is growing. I can only tell you that the gag reflex around the country is growing. It's like, you know, it's like, how can I put it? There is no discernible impeachable crime in all this mountain of manure. There's not one, you know, kernel of corn in all this digestive effluent that's been digested. It doesn't exist. So it works like this. This is the line. No president is above the law. Okay. But what does that mean? The president is above the law. You're accusing the president of being above the law. But how do you put that in actual concrete detailed form? They don't. No president is above the law. And then the other one is he's violating the Constitution. He's violating the Constitution. We can't let him violate the Constitution. Well, where is he violating the Constitution? He's violating the Constitution. How is he violating? Well, he just violated the Constitution. How did he violate the Constitution? Well, he did this, he did that, but none of that is violating the Constitution. So what's going on? So what's going on is this. You have this mass media run by British intelligence, run by the billionaires who own the media, who are part of the British system. And they have created an echo chamber. And the average person, doesn't have the time to figure all of this out. And so you have this echo chamber, and it just blares. It blares and blares and blares. It's been blaring for 3 years about Donald Trump, actually before he got elected. And it's Donald Trump is about to get dumped. Donald Trump is about to be impeached. Donald Trump is a Russia. Donald Trump is a Putin's asset. Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that, Donald Trump. Sex with a porn star, Donald Trump. Grab your crotch, Donald Trump. It just goes on and on and on and on. And when that Russia thing that fell apart, then it, is obstructing justice. Donald Trump is obstructing justice. Donald Trump is, it's just endless. It's every day. Rachel Maddow keeps saying, and now there's a new bombshell. There's a new bombshell on Donald Trump. And then finally one day she says, I'm tired of saying bombshell. Somebody ought to get rid of the word bombshell. But that's kind of what's been going on for 3 years. Right? So now they're doing this impeachment thing. And now they have some kind of articles of impeachment. And it's going to go to the Senate. And nobody's saying there's anything in it. So how does this work? It's the echo chamber of the media that is determining all of this, with a bunch of Democrats who decided, Democratic congressmen who decided, as soon as Donald Trump was elected, that he was going to be impeached. The decision to impeach Donald Trump, or to create the basis for removing Donald Trump, or create the basis for a coup against Donald Trump, was decided by the British intelligence, by the Obama apparatus inside the U.S. government, by the deep state, and by the Democratic Party. They made that decision to do what is now happening 3 years ago, or almost 3 years ago, if you count it from January. And that is what Trump says in this letter that he wrote to Nancy Pelosi, a 6-page letter. And I recommend everyone read that letter. It is written from the standpoint of how historians will look at the situation. So he wrote the letter from the standpoint of how historians 100 years from now will look at the situation. And it's an incredible letter. It calls everything for what it is. And it's 6 pages. And it goes through everything. And I'm not going to go through what's in the letter. But the point is that it's truthful. The letter is truthful. And it is the truth that shapes history. Not all this horseshit. Not all the opera. The opera doesn't... In the final analysis, what Trump said in that letter will be what history will say about this period. Because it's truthful. And he says, I didn't write this for Nancy to sway Nancy. I wrote this for history. So what that means is that Donald Trump has placed himself, or it indicates, I'm not saying he fully has, but it indicates that he has placed himself in history, not in the soap opera. In history. Now what does that mean? That is similar in his way what LaRouche had been doing from the very beginning. LaRouche placed himself in history, not in the current situation. Not in the unfolding of the current situation, but in how history will judge. And what does that mean? It means that the current system can't survive. Something different has to be, and if something different doesn't occur that is viable, there will be no history to judge anything. So if you're saying 100 years from now, it means you're committed to having a viable survival of humanity such that there will be history. So the issue is, by placing yourself 100 years ahead, is that you're committed to 100 years from now. That there will be a human race, that there will be development, that there will be a future. Not just the here and now. And the here and now is so corrupt, you can't even talk about it. It's so corrupt. It's so foul. But the president is pointing to something out there as his point of reference. That's very different. Okay, and I was quite astounded by this letter. That's why I encourage everyone to read it. But let's look at this thing in terms of the international situation. There is a mass strike going on all over the world. There are millions of people on the street in Chile. A new government has come into place in Argentina, which is now calling for the Belt and Road for Argentina. There's something similar in the process of occurring in Brazil. Algeria and Lebanon the situation is completely out of control. In France, there's a general strike that's bringing down the government. You had this thing with Boris Johnson. What happened in England and Great Britain? The conservative leader went to the working class and said, I am with the unions. I am with the workers. I am for social programs. This is not Maggie Thatcher. This is not, magic of the marketplace. The conservative leader, Boris Johnson, did a complete reversal in ideology from this, magic of the marketplace, screw everybody and everything will be all right, of Margaret Thatcher. This is huge. And he won the election. The Labour Party and its decent leader, Jeremy Corbyn, got trapped in what? Got trapped in the whole LGBT, green, all of this, social identity politics, everything else like that. And they abandoned the working class. The Blair faction in the Labour Party had enough influence to queer the entire potential of the Labour Party. And they lost a lot of their base to the conservatives. Ridings or districts that had never elected a conservative, that have always been Labour for the last 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. The people in the countryside, the people in the Midlands, which was the industrial heart, it was like in the U.S., it was the industrial heart. That is unprecedented. So Boris Johnson could be the greatest, could be a real jerk, but he has essentially capitalized on this cultural divide between those who live in the present and are only concerned with their sexual identities or with saving the planet and the environment and all of that, who is pure in the moment. They're not thinking about what the consequences of shutting down the coal-fired plants and the natural gas and the oil burning. They're not looking at the consequences of it because they live in the moment. They live according to their feelings. Greta Thunberg, they live according to their feelings about the planet, about nature, and all of that. They don't look at what's going to happen. And when they do, they say, well, the world's overpopulated. It's too many people. Yeah, Hitler thought there was too many people too. You know, he wanted a green planet, and he wanted everything to be, you know, bucolic. So why not use up all of Eastern Europe and slave labor, and then resettle the area with a nice, you know, ethnic German racially pure people living in a somewhat communal pre-industrial condition, which is perfect, right? That's what all the ecology people want. They want a perfect pre-industrial communal, you know, but none of them are going to work the fields. You know, it's all a fantasy. It's a romantic fantasy, which, you know, marijuana sort of helps you stay with that fantasy a little bit. You know, a lot of marijuana help you with that fantasy. But nonetheless, it's a fantasy. They're living in the now. They're not living in the future of human existence, where you have to develop. You have to go into space, and you have to develop fusion power. You have to keep developing, because otherwise you're not human. Otherwise you're not a human being. You have to create. Human beings have to create for the future of not only mankind, but for the future of your own sanity. Otherwise you're sterile and dead. You're a decaying and dying and degenerating society. You're doomed anyhow. Just on the fact that you're not exercising those powers of the human mind which are necessary, or socializing those powers of the human mind which are necessary. So this is very significant. Now let's look at this situation in terms of the mass media and the echo chamber. They've been going at this almost 3 years. So you would expect a massive outcry of the population into the streets to remove this offensive president who has violated the Constitution and is above the law. You would expect that, right? Where are all the demonstrations against Donald Trump? Well, they had. The Democratic Party and the resist movement, everybody decided they were going to have a massive demonstration this last weekend. 600 demonstrations across the country. Did you hear about them? Well, probably not, because they didn't want you to hear about them because they were pretty small. The average demonstration, and most of them where there was 12 to 2,000 people were demonstrating to impeach Trump. That's really, you know, fantastic. In major cities, there might have been as many as 100 to 200 people. That's really great. And in New York City, there was maybe 1,000 to 2,000 people demonstrating against Trump. And that's after 3 years, almost 3 years of this stuff. Where are the people in the streets to get rid of Donald Trump? Well, I'm going to tell you where they are. They tuned out. They've been tuning out. But today, in Battle Creek, Michigan, tens of thousands of Americans living in that area went into sub-freezing temperatures, waited in line for hours to get in, and many of them probably didn't get in, to hear Donald Trump. And that's with all the media going crazy against Trump. What is going on? Where are the masses of the people? The masses of the people are with whom? With the real resistance, which is in the presidency. That's where the masses of people are going. So what does this mean? This means that the United States and the mass media and the echo chamber are approaching the condition that existed in East Germany by the late 80s. Where by the late 80s, the average East German tuned out completely what was being told of them. It was totally discredited. It was all crap. Okay? It was all crap. They didn't bother. You know. They didn't bother. Okay, we're heading in that direction where the average person in the street just tunes out. CNN, NBC, ABC, even Fox to some degree. They're just tuning it out. It's all bullshit. And they're looking around for what's real. And Trump is real. He's a real person. And he demonstrates a real commitment to the nation against all of this. And he's truthful. Up to a certain point, he's truthful. And what did I say earlier? It is the truth which shapes history. And it doesn't matter where you are. This is the truth that shapes history. Provided there's somebody there to tell you the truth. Or who is committed to the truth, even if they're not completely telling you the truth. And that's where we are. And that's why the LaRouche movement is so important. Even though our numbers are not great, we're having quite an influence. Tonight on Tucker Carlson, he compared the Democratic Congress to a Jim Jones club. That was what we were saying 2 weeks ago. And the San Francisco and the Bay Area machinery of the Democratic Party came out of Jim Jones. Actually, the real story is it came out of Jim Jones, Jim Jones's organization, which was a political vote-getting organization back in the 70s. So anyhow, so no, people are watching and listening, and so this is the period we're going into. It's a mass strike period, and so this thing is going to increase. It's gonna go into the Senate. I don't know what games are going to be played. I don't trust the Republicans in the Senate. I'll be honest with you. I don't trust them at all. You know, but there is a motion. There is a process going on. There is a motion. Meanwhile, Bill Barr and the Horowitz Report. The Horowitz Report is a time bomb because it starts the process of going after the FBI, going after the deep state control, and the malfeasance and lying that they did. This is also mentioned in Trump's letter, that they did in setting up Trump. So they've been caught, and they've been exposed. And this is only the beginning of that process. And that process is also going to be intersecting this whole situation. So I want to say something to you all. The world, as we've been going into, has become very corrupt. Hollywood is very corrupt. The financial system is very corrupt. And in this corruption, people are compromised. People are compromised to survive. They have to compromise often. And often people have to pretend that they're not their politics. They have to hide their politics for fear that they're going to be punished and lose their job if they were to say, you know, I kind of like Trump, or maybe Trump isn't so bad, or stuff like that. But people have to compromise. But no matter how bad it gets, there is an aspect of the human spirit which reaches a point where people can't take it anymore. What's the point of being alive? What, just to get enough to eat? You know, have sex, etc. You know, maybe survive. Maybe I'll maybe do well and have a lot of money, maybe. But is that why you really want to live? You want to have some meaning to your life. You want there to be meaning in your life. Okay? And there's that aspect of humanity. They want some meaning. They want to know that their life meant something. Okay? And that's the realm that we're going into. That's at the core, at the center of a mass strike process. It's this question of having a life that's meaningful. And that's meaningful for the future. Okay? Going along to get along is not sufficient. There has to be some higher purpose for one's existence. And that's where you get the revolutionary process beginning to upwell as people gag on the life that they're living. So that's where we are.
Common stock investments have helped to make our country prosperous and powerful. Owning a share in American industry is like owning a share in the future of our nation. But remember, John Q, there is a risk as well as an advantage in owning any kind of property. So get the facts before you put your money to work.